Now, eventually with passage of time, the time came for the teaching of a great text called Bhagavad Gita, which was taught by a wise man of those times by the name Krishna to a great warrior king by the name of Arjuna. In Bhagavad Gita, the Gitacharya, the teacher of Bhagavad Gita, wonderfully reconciled all these 6 systems of philosophy. Earlier I mentioned that in ancient times we used to have more than 72 such schools of philosophy. Out of these, we are considering only 6 as very important, and we are calling them as Shed Darsanas. So, Bhagavad Gita does a very wonderful job of reconciling all these 6 visions of truth, 6 different schools of philosophy. We have to also understand, when we talk about these different schools of philosophy, that these schools of philosophy do not contradict each other. Each one of them is cannot be considered as complete in itself in terms of unraveling the secrets of the nature, the creation, as well as the nature of consciousness, etc. But each one of them provides a piece of the puzzle, and when you bring all of them together, they fit very nicely, and they seem to give a very comprehensive view of the ultimate truth or ultimate reality. That is what Bhagavad Gita achieved in terms of philosophical reconciliation of all these different schools of thought, and propounded a slightly different but not radically new approach to the concept of man uniting with the divine. Now, here come the 4 classical approaches to yoga, what we are calling as Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga and Karma Yoga in modern times. Jnana Yoga is nothing but Vedanta philosophy in a different language. And what we are calling as yoga, especially these days, is nothing but Raja Yoga philosophy or Raja Yoga school of thought. And what we call as Bhakti Yoga is a mixture of Mimamsa and certain other philosophies. So, ultimately, what were 6 different schools of philosophy, such as Darshanas, now came to be known as 4 forms of yoga: Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga again is nothing but Mimamsa philosophy in a different way, with a little bit of a twist called selflessness. Now, after Bhagavad Gita times, historically we see the popularity of what is called Mimamsa philosophy going up. So, people were given to lot of Vedic rituals and fire ceremonies and things like that. This was the time when Shakya Muni Gautama Buddha was born, and he did not like all these empty rituals that were taking place with a view to taking the man up to the level of heaven. He wanted something deeper. He was looking for something more profound, something more positive than merely going to heaven. And for a long time, actually, Gautama Buddha studied Sankhya philosophy under a great teacher of Sankhya philosophy those days by the name Alarakama. So, Buddhistic philosophy, later on Buddha had his nirvana, his own revelation, etc., and he propounded Buddhistic philosophy, which was highly influenced by Sankhya philosophy actually. So, just like Sankhya philosophy does not quite strongly propound the existence of Ishvara, Buddha also kept very quiet whenever the question of existence of God, existence of soul and what happens after death and such issues were raised. These are considered as avyaktani in Buddhistic philosophy, meaning almost kind of meaningless questions. After Buddhism, again what happened was, historically the same Mimamsa philosophy gained popularity again. People started going back to rituals, etc. And this was the time when again a great philosopher by the name Adi Shankara was born. This is approximately 700 to 800 BC that we are talking about. Adi Shankaracharya came along. He again repopularized the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, reconciled all these different schools of philosophy. In fact, again during Shankara's time also there were more than 72 such different schools of philosophy. He reconciled the messages of all these things, and he established Vedanta as the highest school of philosophy, as the highest, as the boldest, as the sublimest of all human thoughts and all philosophies in existence at that time. After Adi Shankaracharya, a few hundred or so years later, the invasion of Alexander into India has happened. This is now we are talking about around 300 or so BC. Now, when Alexander came, that area, that whole civilization which was to the east of a river called Sindhu, which is in modern Pakistan, was very confusing to him from a religious viewpoint. Because if we stopped someone and asked him, what is your religion? First of all, the person would ask him back, what is a religion? Well, Alexander would clarify, okay, let's say, who is your God? What is the religion you believe in? Who is your God, and what kind of philosophical system do you follow? Then the person would say, oh, I belong to Sankhya philosophy. Okay, who is your God? Oh, we don't believe in any kind of God at all. Okay, great. Alexander would ask the next guy, what is your philosophy? He would say, I am a Vedantin. Okay, great. Who is your God? Oh, Brahman is my God, and this entire universe is nothing but Brahman. Now, understandably, such a plethora of schools of philosophy, such a vastly different thought forms probably drove the Alexander and all the Greek scholars of that time crazy. So, what they said was, all these people who follow these different philosophies who are east of the river of Sindhu are called as Indus, I-N-D-U-S. This, and the country itself was named as India by them. In ancient times, India, what we are calling as India, was called Bharata, Bharatavarsha, Bharatakanda. These were all the different names for India in those days. Now, for the first time, West got created the term Indus, and that was the term that the Greeks took back with them. Now, a few years down the lane, a few hundred years down the lane, around 1200 or so, the Arabs invaded India, and they brought their own religion called Islam with them. Even then, the word Hinduism was not known to them. They used to call all the people who are native to India as Kafirs, which is a kind of a derogatory term, which means non-believers, people who do not believe in Allah or the holy ways of Islam, etc. A few hundred years later, in the mid 17th century, the British came to India and they colonized India. Now, in the meanwhile, the word Indus, which was taken back by the Greeks, became Hindu and stayed in the West. British brought back this word Hinduism. For them, they were looking to classify all the people that were residing in the country. Now, all the people who believed in Allah and who believed in Islam were very easy to classify. There were not a lot of differences among them, even though there is some sectarianism even in Islam. But all the other people, they bracketed all these people into one word called Hinduism. So, originally, as British intended it, Hinduism was not a religious word, not a spiritual word. It was more of a political classification. But what they are calling as Hinduism consisted of people who believe in God, as well as those who do not believe in God, those who believe in one God, those who believe in many manifestations of God, etc., etc., etc.